Hi, and welcome back to the North Lodge Cottage Garden. The next rose I'd like to talk to you about really excites me. I waited for this rose for a very long time. It was out of stock absolutely everywhere when I tried to lay my hands on it. And finally, last year, it was found for me by a family member and bought for my 40th birthday. I've now had the rose for 15 months and I have the pleasure of offering you my full review on this absolute beauty. This is Molineux, bred and introduced by David Austin Roses in 1994. You can see, even in this light, it is absolutely resplendent. It simply radiates colour. Even on the darkest of days out in the garden, this rose looks absolutely stunning, and I cannot recommend this rose enough for anybody that wants to pack that really strong punch of colour into their garden. Here at North Lodge, we've got this planted right outside our kitchen window, and we've got two windows in the kitchen and every window looks at the same place, and it is an absolute joy to see this outside stood next to Bevan, who is very pale in colour, with these beautiful resplendent golden blooms that are held very upright above a really lovely shaped compact rose bush. Molineux reaches very standard around 3 to 3.5 feet. It is around 3.5 feet across as well, so very small and compact. So if you're working in a small space, on a balcony, a terrace, or on a some sort of patio, Molineux is going to be a really good rose for you. Now, this particular rose is actually named after the stadium of the Wolverhampton Wanderers. Now, I'm not a football fanatic, but this rose is stunning, and I'm really pleased that David Austin launched this in 1994, because it is absolutely stunning. The blooms are, as you can see, this absolutely, I'm sorry, I'm repeating myself a lot, but you know, sometimes some of these roses really catch me unawares by just how outstandingly beautiful they are. It is packed full of rich, sumptuous, golden petals, ruffles and ruffles of them, working their way in slowly to that very tight eye. Very differently on this particular rose, it's very dark green right in the centre, and some of your very early blooms at the beginning of the season might even not quite open properly in the centre, and you'll have a funny looking dark green eye in the centre there. But that's not to worry. As the season moves forward, those will work their way out and you'll be left with these absolutely resplendent golden blooms. You can see there's a lovely ruffled edge to the outer side of the fruit, giving this rose a beautiful dome-shaped appearance on the top. As it ages, take a look at the grid upload that I'm going to do later on today, and have a look at the flowers as they age. As the flower completely opens out, you have this wonderful glowing resplendent gold in the very centre, and a very pale yellow halo around the outside, which frames it absolutely beautiful. It's got a dark matte green, mid-green foliage, which is quite deeply serrated on the outer edges. Very strong, very upright and vigorous. It has no problems whatsoever, to my knowledge, with any disease. It hasn't suffered with black spot, mould or mildew in the garden, and even stands up to the rain quite well. The stems, as you can see, are really quite sturdy. If I wobble that one around, they're quite strong for each particular bloom. The blooms are born virtually individually all the time. They're not born in sprays, one particular bloom to a stem. This one does actually cut quite beautifully in and come into the house, lasting 2 or 3 days in a vase, which I know doesn't sound all that long, but for a David Austin rose, vase life is always very short, and beauty like this is always very fleeting. So 3 or 4 days in a vase is absolutely perfect within the house. Now, the scent, David Austin says this has a strong hybrid tea smell to it, but unfortunately I'm not picking up on any fragrance on this at all. For me, this is all about colour, and I don't really work with an awful lot of primary colours here in my rose collection. Everything is very soft and whimsy, lots of pale yellows and pastel blues and soft pinks and greys all over the garden. So for me to choose and fall in love with a rose with a dark golden colour like this, like Molineux, is very unusual, but I can't recommend this rose enough. It starts flowering in mid-June, somewhere in the region of about the 2nd or 3rd week in June, and will flower all the way on and off to the back end of the season, having huge flushes of flowers all the time. This one put on a massive show for me last year, right at the very end of July, and another one at the end of August. It was never really out of flower, so looking at outside the kitchen window, literally glowing, even on a day like today when the skies have turned grey and they're full of rain, it is out in the garden radiating this stunning colour. So this is Molineux, bred and introduced by David Austin Roses in 1994, strongly recommended by myself, and you might see this one moving up into the top 20 of my top David Austin recommendations.